For those who don't know, Config is going on, which is Figma's conference. And they just announced a bunch of new things that are apparently really flashy on the webpage. So I'm going to scroll so that gets out of the way because I want to talk about the new things Figma released because some are exciting, some aren't necessarily. All of them are interesting though. So let's dive right in. We're launching Figma AI, UI3, and Figma Slides, along with major updates to dev mode and improvements to your favorite Figma features. The last few decades of software have been marked by exponential growth. This trend is far from over. In a world where AI will be able to output fully functioning interfaces from a simple prompt, design is more important than ever. In fact, design is what will differentiate great products from the obvious solutions, and Figma's job is to help you explore the option space of possibilities. Today, we're launching many features to support that end-to-end process and unblock creativity so that teams can bring their best ideas to life. That's a bunch of marketing mumbo-jumbo. Let's see what they actually did. Figma AI, think bigger and build faster. Okay, we're still in the marketing mumbo jumbo. With AI, going from idea to product is more tangible than ever. At Figma, we have a unique perspective and challenge on the role of AI in design because our design teams build for other designers. This is actually an interesting thing that Figma has that I've also seen in a lot of the companies I work with. Developers building for developers will make better things because they understand developers' needs. Designers designing for designers will make better designs because they understand the designer's needs. Game developers who play games will do better than game devs who don't play games because the ones who do play games understand what a good game is better and they understand the needs of gamers better. Figma has a unique place because their design team, which is obviously huge and really talented, they're designing for designers, which is a really interesting place to be in. And it means they can do a lot of like more meta level things that might potentially be interesting for AI, but also might not be. So I'm curious what they're doing. Visual search, find what you're looking for. I'll say that search in Figma definitely needs some love because nobody labels their shit. It's actually a meme. I even think that on their Twitter account, they've mentioned this recently. Let me find it, where they had a screenshot of a bunch of bad labels. Yeah, riff 1, riff 2, riff 3, crit 1, crit 2, crit 3, and then more information after because they actually went and labeled things a bit. But it's still not great. Their labeling and the way people set things up is just not great. Look at all these comments. Figma GPT is renaming your layers automatically. People want that. I have something like that right now actually in Arc. So if I save this photo, Arc will automatically rename this based on what it thinks happened. It crossed out the original name, Figma tweet media.png. Accurate enough, better than the alternatives. But yeah, this suffers from what people are calling the Photoshop PST problem, which it absolutely is, that it's far too easy to let your names rot and now nothing is searchable. But with Figma, where you have these design systems with hundreds of people possibly working in the same files, not being able to find things sucks. So I'm sure what they're doing here is AI tagging shit. Let's see what they're actually doing though. We know that working on a new project doesn't always mean starting from scratch, and it can be tough to locate a production screenshot or an existing component. We're introducing visual search to help you more easily find what you're looking for with a single reference. Search for anything from icons to entire design files with a screenshot, a selected frame, or even a simple sketch with the pencil tool. And Figma will pull in similar designs from team files that you have access to. And with improved asset search, Figma now uses AI to understand the context behind your search queries. You can easily discover assets even if your search terms don't match their names. Efficiency updates. Stay in the flow. Designers spend a lot of time on tedious tasks that take away from the work that they want to be doing. We're launching a bundle of AI features to automate these tasks and help you work more efficiently. With these new capabilities, you can generate realistic images and copy, riff on and rewrite text, automatically wire up prototypes, and rename layers in a click. This feels like it's a better version of like a stock asset tool plus better lorem ipsum. Make designs, a better way to get started. Faced with a blank canvas and don't know where to start? Make Designs, which lives in the new Actions panel, allows you to quickly generate UI layouts and component options from text prompts. Just describe what you need and Figma will provide a first draft to help you explore various design directions and kickstart your process. This I kind of like. I find that design tools more so than like code stuff. If you're given a heavy starting point, you can just take 3 parts, delete the rest, and play. It's decent to do that in most design tools. So I can see this being useful of like a more specific starting point that will still be wrong, but just giving you those parts. Somebody just pointed out in chat, isn't this v0.dev? Very similar. The difference being that v0 gives you code you can go change, so you can't do the same like drag and dropping level of control. This actually seems kind of compelling. This I could see being useful, especially when you're learning Figma, to ask for a UI with like 3 buttons and a form, and then see what it does so you can better understand some of the intricacies of Figma. Things like the auto fit solutions that are really weird to figure out initially, but if you see them working, it's a lot easier to play with them later on. Somebody just pointed out in chat that this is a design tool for devs. Designers know what they want to design. That's their job. mostly agree, but I specifically think the point of this is for devs is very real, because the devs are the ones adding the AI shit, not the designers. Let's be real here. But the developers are doing this so that they can enable themselves to be more productive on the design side. I know many developers, especially in the front end space, desperately want to be more productive on the design side. And if they can make these little things to make it easier, another one that I rely on a lot is Tailwind UI. Tailwind UI is a thing you can buy from the Tailwind team where they give you a ton of super, super useful components that you can use as starting points for your stuff. So you pay them the license fee. Now you, for life, have access to all these things. You can just go copy, paste it into your code base and make a bunch of changes. And it makes you much more competent seeming at design when you're using Tailwind. Those types of tools have proven to be super, super useful. Obviously, the big one now is ShadCN. ShadCN UI is a fantastic free open source component library to grab any of the things you're seeing in this UI here to just throw into your code base. Super, super handy. It's what crazy big things like even Vercel themselves are built largely on ShadCN UI now. These tools have gained so much popularity because they both allow us to have a good starting point and the type of customization we need to make something real. And that's the balance we're starting to find. To build these features, we used out-of-the-box LLMs, but to make them work better for you, we know that our model needs to be tuned to the specific ways that teams work at Figma. Learn more about our approach to training. Interesting. Our AI features will be free to all users during the beta period, which runs through 2024. As we learn how these tools are used and their underlying costs for Figma, we may need to introduce usage limits for the beta. I love that even Figma has no idea how expensive running the AI is going to be, so they're just outright saying that. Thankfully, they have a couple $1 billion from their breakup fee with Adobe that they can spend in the time, so at least they have the money to spend. We'll see how that goes. When Figma AI becomes generally available, we'll provide clear guidance on pricing. Yeah, good luck. Especially once you're doing like UI gen stuff, the GPU costs skyrocket. And right now, Figma server costs are only expensive due to weird decisions around their databases. This is going to make their server costs massive in general. I'm curious to see how that goes for them. The next big thing, UI 3. Very overdue. They're finally streamlining and simplifying the Figma UI, and I'm so excited to see what they're doing. This is honestly why I decided to do a video, because I'm so curious. Today, we're rolling out UI 3, the third redesign of the Figma interface since we launched in our closed beta over a decade ago. With a more immersive canvas, component-centered UI, and a new icon set, UI 3 is informed by how you work today and motivated by the feedback from the community. Ever since launching Figma, we've layered on functionality to improve the user experience and make Figma more powerful. After years of adding more features and updates incrementally, we wanted to create more space in Figma, while also respecting the muscle memory and workflow patterns that you've cultivated over the years. That's a really tough part there. Once you have muscle memory on how a thing works, good luck not breaking that during a massive overhaul. I'm very curious to see how that worked, and I would love to hear from any Figma diehards in chat that have tried this V3 stuff to know how well it works and feels for you. Beyond solving immediate pain points, we're paving the way for where Figma aims to go. Without consistent patterns, systems, and a structure that opens up Figma to accommodate new surfaces across the Figma platform, this redesign reflects that shift. That makes sense. It seems like their goal is to make it so they can add new features without having to destroy the whole UI over and over again. This looks so much better. This just looks so hilariously better. The floating, the soft corners, the amount of additional space you have here, the sidebar here having the like Notion style emojis for each section. This is a good change. Whitelist only, rip. Apparently I can't try this new UI because I didn't go to config, so I don't have access yet. Also, small thing, notice the difference in the cursor rotation for the cursor there and the one on the site by default. Those are the weird things they seem to be changing right now. Interesting that they have a different amount of rotation on the cursor that they like. We know that it may take some time to adjust these changes, so we're slowly rolling them out to users starting today. You are welcome to turn off the redesign as we improve UI 3 with your feedback. Eventually, we'll migrate all users to UI 3. First, we started by reimagining the Figma canvas to maximize precious real estate. Put the spotlight on your work, clearing away distractions when you want to concentrate, but still keeping the tools within reach. Good change. We explored some radical departures, like a super minimal UI that only revealed itself on hover. No panels, no properties, just you and your work. In other variations, sidebars would appear and disappear. These iterations made the work environment too unstable, but inched us closer to our ultimate solution: resizable panels and a slim new toolbar at the bottom of the canvas. Yeah, this is a nice change that gives you access to a lot of things. It almost feels a bit like Excalidraw-y, where on Excalidraw, you have this bar up top and then nothing else appears until you click a button that needs. So when I click here, we get this info. When I'm on the pointer, we don't have it. Very nice change. Not the things I would have expected them to go in the direction of, but cool to see regardless. All layout related options, including width, height, and auto layout, are now in a single panel. Oh, thank you. The XYWH panel is so useless. Having that include layout is duh. There's now backgrounds on inputs, borders around dropdowns, rounded corners, and 200 expressive icons hand-drawn by the designer Tim Van Dam. These serve as visual explanations on how to interact with things. You can also turn on labels to quickly understand what these things do, but you also turn them off. Good shit. Their big one more thing that they dropped at the end of the keynote was Figma Slides. Weird product for Figma to make, but honestly makes sense, especially compared to stuff like FigJam. This fits really well. There's a bunch of companies that have tried to be better PowerPoints. Obviously, Google Slides is the popular one, but there's also Pitch, I believe. Pitch, presentation software for fast-moving teams. Originally, it was to help founders make better pitch decks, but now it's all sorts of sales things. It's meant to be a UI to make better PowerPoint type presentations way faster. Lots of big companies use them. We use them a bit for paying, but then I realized it's better to just not have slides for early stage stuff. Regardless, interesting to see Figma jumping in here, letting the designers and the design tools be involved in the presentation process. If they combine some video stuff in here, there could be something really promising. As I said, decks haven't kept the pace with how much work's changed. That's why so many designers reach for Figma as a solution. Last year alone, teams created over 3.5 million slide files in Figma. Yep. Same way I tried to in Excalidraw, and it was not easy. I could never get the Excalidraw font working in Keynote, so I would just make the slide in Excalidraw, then export it to Keynote, which was hell. Since then, they've added a slides feature to Excalidraw, but it's still a little too minimal for my taste, but it's cool to see us finally taking slides a bit more seriously. I know I've largely given up on slides for my presentations because it's so annoying to do and do well. Anyways, collaborating with non-designers or presenting to those unfamiliar with the tool often required tedious workarounds and hack-together workflows. Yeah. This is a tool for when your design team has opinions on how your slides should look, but people who aren't your design team need to make the slides. Potentially really useful. Yeah, Figma Slides is in free beta. In early 2025, it will be available for free and paid plans, starting at $3 and $5 per user per month. And now the thing we're all here for. Updates to dev mode. At Config last year, we introduced dev mode, a new workspace in Figma for devs. Today, we're launching updates to dev mode to better support the realities of an iterative design process, speed up developer workflows, and bring designs and code closer together. Stay in lockstep with new views and statuses. Handoff isn't a single moment in time. In reality, it's an iterative, non-linear process where teams go back and forth as design and code evolve. Our new Ready for Dev view cuts down on the noise and helps developers, designers, and other stakeholders know exactly what's needed to drive the project forward. And with Focus View and the ability to mark designs as dev complete, developers can now stay in the flow while staying in sync with their collaborators. The wording of that was weird, but it seems like the goal here is basically give us diffs because devs love diffs. We don't want to read through everything, hunting for changes. And also, I know I'm guilty of this. I'm sure others have been too. Have you ever seen those memes on Twitter? Like only an expert designer can tell the difference between these two screenshots, and then there's like no difference between the screenshots. I know we've all been there a few times, and if you just show us a diff that's literally describing what's different between the two, life gets much easier. So if this is going to give me diffs for what my designer actually changed, and my designer hits me up and says, hey, I updated the designs, can you fix the code? And now it shows me exactly what they changed. Oh boy, that makes life a lot easier for my colorblind ass. Let's hear about this Ready for Dev view thing, though. It can be hard for developers to find what they should be working on amidst hundreds of design explorations, especially when work lives across multiple pages. The new Ready for Dev view allows devs to search and filter, parse updates in a list, and see who updated what and when, so they have all the context they need. Again, this is kind of like a feed based on diffs. Having blame too here, the ability to know who changed what, is huge, because knowing which designer to talk to is often a struggle for these companies where design and eng are too far separated. These tools and these changes encourage the developers and designers talk a bit more, which has the potential to be a huge change in how these teams collaborate. I know one of my biggest strengths at Twitch was how close I was with both design and backend when I was leaning in the front end direction, because I was really interested in design, but my history was backend. So I was always bridging the gaps between these things. Having tools that encourage people to do that is a good thing, and making it easier for a dev who wants to talk to design and ask them questions by showing them who changed what, this is an obvious win. Focus View. Our new Focus View allows developers to tune out distractions and just see what's ready to build. Oh man, very real. Nothing worse than a random Figma doc you get sent that has 15 versions of the same thing, and they say, oh yeah, version 32 revision B is the one you should use. Can you just hide the other shit for me? Especially if you're going to be giving me diffs across all the things that change. Can I filter that into just the one component that matters? Very nice change. They have visibility into all the changes and status updates that have been made to the design over time, including a snapshot of how the design looked before the most recent design revision. Once they're finished building, developers can then mark the design as completed to close the loop. more powerful ways to track status. We know that designs are always in progress and last-minute changes are always inevitable. Now, when a designer makes changes to designs marked as ready for dev, they can keep developers updated and leave helpful notes to describe what's changed. Ooh, that's really handy. If the designers can leave notes, like commit messages for why they're doing things, that's going to be really helpful for devs. Devs will then receive a notification about the changes so they know exactly what they need to work on next. These are the things that make Figma so successful. It's not because they're the best design tool. It's because they're a good enough design tool with the best experience for devs that then want to do things with it afterwards. If I hop into one of my things here, like this random thing I was working on a thumbnail for, if I want to grab the code for this run ad button, I can do that. I can go to export, and there's a lot of options here where I can export it as like an SVG or whatever, but I can also, I guess you have to go into the code mode now for it. Apparently I have to get dev mode. Cool. Will they not even show me the CSS anymore? Right click and copy as CSS. Copy as code, CSS. There we go. Thank you. And now we've been dumped CSS for that rectangle, where the background color, the border radius, the width and height, position, you can get the CSS straight out of Figma. That was a revolution at the time. Massive change to how developers and designers collaborated once we could get the exact CSS that the design tool generates. Made everything much better. That's why Figma keeps winning, because they are solving the problems developers have, and developers often make these decisions, and they can make these decisions in the direction that favors Figma. It makes all the sense in the world. Stay consistent and efficient with Code Connect. Design systems help bridge the gap between design and code and help teams move fast as they scale. But the benefits of having a design system in Figma all but go out the window if developers aren't adopting it too. That's why we built Code Connect, which services design system code and makes it more useful across frameworks and languages. Today, we're excited to make Code Connect generally available, alongside improvements like surfacing connected code snippets in the component playground, a new tool to streamline setup, and support for React, React Native, iOS, Android, and more to come. Again, really cool. The amount of work that Twitch had to do in order to get the design system that we made in Figma for all the components into our code base and keep those in sync so that the components we had access to as developers were the same exact ones that were being used by the designers was a massive challenge. And the goal of Code Connect is to try and link the design system to the code directly. Every attempt I've seen at this has failed miserably, like miserably. So I'm not necessarily saying this is going to be a massive win, but if they can pull this off, if they can get to a point where you have libraries in Figma where you can grab the Twitch button as a Twitch designer, and it's the same Twitch button that will work on iOS and Android and web, and just know all of those things work the same across all platforms, and having access to those as a designer, knowing the devs will also have access, that's a huge win. I can't tell you how many times I ran into issues where we were using the standard components from our design system, but a designer changed the background color to something that isn't an option for us, or did something custom that we can't do. And I have to tell them like, hey, I can make this work, but I would have to write custom CSS on top of the design system that changes and might even break some things. So there's a risk here. If you can have the same limitations I have with the properties that I'm passing to my components in your design system in Figma, the likelihood that we have those designs that aren't compatible with the code goes down to basically nothing. But then they have to make it work, which is a terrifying thought. Here's where things get fun. In order for this to work, you have to import a Figma package, similar to using something like Storybook, where you have files that are the stories for each of your components. But here you can now connect a given component to a URL in your design system, specify which props you are actually allowed to have access to using Figma's helper with string, boolean, enum, all passing types and defaults here as well. So now you can expose something in your design system directly to Figma, and now you can export all of this right out there. Interesting that you have to add this to your code base that way. I know a lot of developers will be skeptical of importing a Figma package in their code base as a compiler step for their design system. But if they can get this right, at the very least, it is exponentially better than what we've been dealing with Storybook. Oh no, polyfill pwn incoming, not nice. Extra dev work to document in Figma. Yeah, curious to see what the adoption ends up looking like for this. But remember, like this isn't for all of the code in your code base. The goal here isn't for every component in your code base to be exposed to Figma this way. Is to have your design system, which is ideally a library and a package of its own that has all your UI components that are shared across your applications, and have that expose the core component library to Figma in that one like repo or folder in your code base, and have that be owned by the design engineering team, which is a team of a couple people that just manage the component library. This is a good tool for them to use to bridge these gaps. This is not a thing I would expect a 5-person team to adopt. but a 500 to plus person company that has a 5-person design tooling team that just does this gap bridging, this could be useful to them. So if you're a company that's big enough to have a team specifically managing your design system in both Figma and code, their job could be a little easier here. But for everybody else, a little more questionable. And then they dumped a bunch of quality of life improvements at the end here, like auto layout, UI kits, and a responsive prototype viewer. Ooh, responsive prototype viewer is actually huge. It's so annoying having to like custom make multiple views of the same thing and like copy paste the entire contents to make sure it works in multiple views. Having multiple viewers for one set of things, that might be my favorite change here so far, actually. Auto layout being better is huge. It's more predictable when you need it and easier to ignore when you don't. Now, Figma can not only suggest when multiple frames of auto layout might be needed for a full design element, but it can also create those frames for you. So for those who aren't familiar with auto layout, it's meant to stretch things and make them fit, similar to like a Flexbox type thing in your design system. And it was rough. You can see here with auto layout on, it's not actually stretching the contents here. It is just stretching the top bar a little bit and over and under exposing it, but it's not changing the content below at all. Yeah, obvious win. Obvious win. UI kits help you get started quickly. This is cool that they have design kits for popular things like iOS, Material Design 3, etc. Each UI kit includes component sets and example mockups, which allow you to start from full layouts. Just drag in an entire example screen as a starting point, and it's fully editable with components from the library. Plus, each of these UI kits is backed by Code Connect. That's actually pretty cool. If I could use this to mock thumbnails with fake iOS screenshots, that might be nice. Just got a good bit of info from Gabriel, which is the Code Connect stuff only is available for organization and enterprise, which makes sense. That's not something you should use as a small team, but if you're on the enterprise plan, that is helpful. Also a good upsell for the companies. I know some big companies that are still using like the free and hobby tiers in Figma. Now there's a real reason for them to upgrade, which is probably why they're doing that. And here, the thing I was most hyped about, the prototype viewer resizes responsively. Experience your designs on any screen size with a new prototype viewer experience that resizes responsively. With a new menu option for previewing or presenting prototypes, the viewer will respect constraints and auto layout properties as you resize the viewer window or select a different device frame. This is, for those who aren't familiar in Chrome, we have this awesome tool where you can choose between all these different device resolutions and sizes. We can see how this looks on a Z Fold 5, which is a really long phone. We can see how it looks on an iPhone 14 Pro Max, which is a really fat, large phone. We can see how it looks on a Nest Hub Max if you are using that for some reason. But the ability to swap with the same code and design between these things is so handy as a developer. And the fact we didn't have something like that in Figma is honestly a little embarrassing. But now we do. Yeah. Contents of prototype will resize and relayout to respect constraints and auto layout properties as the prototype viewer resizes. This allows you to view designs at different window sizes and check the responsive behavior of your designs. Huge. A+. The number of times I've had to argue with design because they didn't think to make a mockup at a small enough size. I'm like, hey, what happens if I cut the screen size in half? And they're like, good luck. This is so nice. This is so nice. According to chat, auto layout still lacks a lot of flexboxiness. From my experience, this is true. I've found Flexbox to be more intuitive than auto layout, which is kind of funny because Flexbox is not intuitive and auto layout is a design tool. But yeah, this lines up for my experience. I'm hopeful that it catches up. But we also have to consider the fact that iOS and Android and other platforms as well that Figma is used to mock for do not have a Flexbox equivalent unless you're using some crazy shit like Yoga. Yoga is an embedded layout engine targeting web standards. The goal of Yoga is to make things like Flexbox work in places that aren't JavaScript. So Yoga is how React Native does Flexbox on mobile platforms because it's using native code. It is largely written in C++ because it is a really complex mathematic layout engine that tries to apply the same behaviors we expect from things like Flex in the browser. Most mobile apps don't have Yoga installed. More of them probably should because these patterns are really, really useful. But right now they don't. So if we just add all of Flexbox into Figma, half the stuff people design with it won't work on iOS without a lot of additional things on top. Who thought we were going to be mentioning C++ in a Figma video? Here we are. Coming soon, improvements for agencies and freelancers. Improving Figma isn't just about the interface or the capabilities. It's also about user experience that may be less visible, like our billing architecture. Moving forward, we're working to make it easier for freelancers and agencies to collaborate with external clients, streamline project handoff, and simplify billing. This is actually a huge deal. The amount of times I've worked on a thing using tools I'm paying for, but I wanted to export to somebody else. Like Even with Frame, for example, if I'm working with a client and they want to review a video ahead of time, I have to add them to my Frame account and then pay for them to have a seat. That's obnoxious. Having good workflows around these things make it way easier to give others access, export it to them, let them pay, and not have to worry about all of these things. I'm already seeing in chat people freaking out. This is huge. Most design is done by agency and freelancers. Yep. Wish more cloud providers had that. Totally agree. Yeah, this is a thing that's been needed for a while. Really cool to see that they're doing that. It's quite a release. Nothing massive, but a lot of wins that I'm genuinely really excited about. And I guess developer mode got some love, although they didn't really show much of that here, and I don't care to look deeper for it. Sorry for anybody who is here just for that part. Let me know what you think in the comments. Are you more excited about Figma? Are you scared of the AI stuff? Let me know. Until next time, peace, nerds.